Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. International break. If there's any sigh, it's because of the international break. Although there is a part of me that does wonder whether Spurs needed to just take a breath and collect themselves after the mayhem of the week before international break. Maybe it's actually not too badly timed for a change. And I guess you could argue that for those injured, it's 2 weeks out of their recovery time. Actually, that's probably a good place to start, isn't it, with injuries in terms of a certain Micky van der Ven. Of course, we all saw his Instagram story post. I say his. I'm very wary, and you've heard me, anyone that's a regular on these knows I'm very wary of reading too much into social media stuff because let's be honest, and I'm not saying it's definitely the case here, some people definitely do their own stuff, but on the whole, these, professional footballers do hire not even just people, like a team of people to run their social media accounts. It may be that Micky van der Ven does all his own stuff, could well be, puts together his own highlights packages. But yeah, obviously, if you didn't see it, essentially the young Dutchman put up it was a little highlights compilation of him from recent games, and it had an hourglass, sand timer, whatever you want to call it, in the bottom left corner with a few dots after it. Obviously, everyone looking at that would understandably go like, "Ooh, exciting, coming back soon." I would say, again, if we're overly reading into such things, normally when players do that, they normally put the word soon. And I mean, it technically just means it's a matter of time, I guess. But obviously, people got very excited by that. And hey, I must admit, 100% honesty, as I always try to do in these things, I saw it and I thought, oh, hello, is that a good thing? But of course, did my inquiries as I have to do as a journalist. And yeah, everything pretty much came back. No, it's all currently still on the same timeline. Interestingly, I'm still getting messages from and on social media from people saying, why are the club being so quiet about this? Why haven't we been told when he's coming back? I was sat in the press conference where Ange Postecoglou very clearly said he'll be back in the new year. So yeah, that's the current recovery timeline. I don't think they'll ever put a precise date or game back on it. I'm sure internally there'll be a little target game that they might have to come back for. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Look, hey, in an ideal world, who knows? He's a very young guy, only 22 years old. Certainly myself being far older and still playing five-a-side football each week and various other sports, I know how much longer it takes for injuries to kind of heal and recover and even just muscles to stop aching. But I guess when you're 22 years old, maybe your body heals that little bit quicker. So who knows? Maybe as the process goes on, you might shave a little bit of time off of it. But what I would say is I still don't entirely know whether it was the same leg or not. I've been asking around in Germany and still haven't got anywhere with this. But he has previously had a hamstring injury, Micky van der Ven, and he was out for 2.5 months with it. It was one that kept him out a fair whack of time. I think he missed something like 12 matches, something like that. So it's one of those, especially with hamstrings and young players, fast players, you want to make sure it's healed. You want to make sure the player is 100% and there's no chance of reoccurrence. Otherwise, we've seen it, and unfortunately we've seen it with Ryan Sessegnon, it becomes a regular thing that kind of really fragments their careers. Still haven't heard entirely when we're going to get Ryan Sessegnon back. That I felt was going to be roughly about now. When was I told that? It was about 6-8 weeks ago. To be fair, I want to clarify that before any aggregator goes, Gold says he should have been now. It was, there was a very rough time frame of something like 6 to 8 weeks. I think it was way back, which would have taken you maybe to November, might have been the end of November. But certainly, every time Postecoglou's mentioned him, he said he's still a way off. And I haven't heard anything recently. I've been trying to make some inquiries and no one seems to be putting a date on anything yet. Who knows? I mean, he was back doing some light training on the grass, I think, wasn't he, a couple of weeks back? Again, I think especially with Ryan Sessegnon, it's just taking it so carefully. This surgery that he had was meant to be the one that pretty much lessened the chances of him getting these hamstring problems again. It was meant to be almost like the last resort thing to do to try and sort it completely. So I guess you're going to want to make sure there's not going to be setbacks, anything like that, before you let him back into, a pitch, and typically right now is the time when Spurs could have done with him as well. So I think the same goes for Micky van der Ven, is you don't want to start him on that road. So I get why people get very excited. Oh my goodness, when I put out the thing, and I know it's mostly fun, but when I put something like that out and people want to get excited about something and they're told, maybe it's not as exciting as you think, there's a lot of anger. I think a lot of it is social media fun anger, just people being silly, I hope. But yeah, it's quite funny. You kind of end up being the bad guy because you're doing your job. Again, I don't take it personally. I really don't, because I know, like I say, a lot of it is just people being funny, essentially, on social media. And I do have, I guess, this reputation of being the guy that poo-poos things. To poo-poo for many years. A guy that dampens down things. And I guess the reason I don't do that because I enjoy it. I do it because when people are asking questions about stuff, I go and try and find the answers for them. And I don't know. I guess I'm a bit of a realist, so I'd rather kind of know exactly what the situation is rather than hoping and having that hope crushed. I think maybe. Look, like I said, Van der Ven might recover quickly. You never know. You might over the coming weeks see that his progress is that little bit quicker than expected, and he comes back a little bit sooner than Postecoglou is telling everyone, maybe. But right now, still seems to be on the original recovery timeline. So, yeah, we'll see. And the other thing that people keep saying is that, because he didn't have surgery, then he's not going to be out that long. That's just not how it worked. I have kind of properly spoken to medical experts on this, not just used my own, knowledge of Googling on the NHS site and things like that, which I have done as well. But medical experts have told me, it's really, even a hamstring injury not requiring surgery could still take 12 weeks to heal. It can still need that amount of time. And technically, I think you can have a grade 3, which is the worst one, and still not require surgery. Again, it hasn't been released what kind of grade this injury is yet. But like I say, it's no surgeries. It's a bit of a misnomer. I think it's maybe a good thing for the player overall, but in terms of recovery timelines, it's not massively changing things. I mean, you can have some really bad ones that require surgery. I mean, Harry Kane and Toby Alderweireld certainly were long-term ones. They were out for a while. Toby Alderweireld didn't really come back to playing regularly until the turn of the year, and I think he did his in September. I know he was back, but certainly Poch was using Davinson Sanchez over him a lot because they weren't really 100% convinced on kind of throwing him back into it. And Harry Kane, he got lucky, didn't he? Because can't really get lucky because of COVID, but the break in the season because of COVID meant that he had more recovery time. Yeah. So we'll see. I think, it's like I say, it's just important not to rush him. And I get the excitement getting him back because he is so important to the way the Postecoglou system works. But I'd rather have him back at 100% and not have this happen again than rush him back, getting him for a game or two, and then he does something to his hamstring again, pulls it, strains it, tears it, whatever. So that's that on Van der Ven. We've got various little bits to work through in this. Little bits and pieces that have either happened last few days. There's been a couple of good interviews out there. Little international break updates on players and injuries and not injuries. And some other little bits and pieces that I've done, really. And then we'll have a Q&A. Lots of you put lots of fun and terrific questions in. It's got some really good ones to kind of dive into. There's also some little bit of financial stuff I'm going to talk about as well. Need a little bit more on that, but I'll kind of go with what I've got right now. And hopefully, if I get anything that can clarify it now, and if not, we'll update that in a future one. But there's a good interview with Yves Bissouma that I think was done a couple of weeks ago, just before the injuries and his second suspension. Which he did with, I think, Julien Laurent, the French journalist. It was a good interview. It's about half an hour. I can't remember if it's on Spurs Play. It's on somewhere I watched. I think it's on the YouTube channel. It's a really good interview, and there's a nice little bit about Postecoglou. I'm just going to give you the quote from that, where he was asked whether his good form is mostly down to Postecoglou coming along. And he said, yes, it's a very big, very, very big reason. It's a very big reason. You should know that 6 months before the end of last season, I'd already prepared for this season because I'm a fighter and I won't accept a situation if it remains negative. I take full responsibility when it's time to work to change things. So when I was injured at the end of last season, I was already preparing for this one, right? So I came in, there was a new coach. We see football the same way. He talks to me before training. He gives me all his trust. He explains. After that, it's up to me to do things well. You have a coach who understands football, who tries to talk to you as well. It felt so nice. It's been a long time since anyone said anything to me. Sometimes you know you have something, but when people who know when people who know more than you tell you, it gives you even more confidence. I was already confident, but what Ange told me was special. It changed something, you know. And there's one thing that jumped out at that with me was it's been a long time since anyone said anything to me. That's not a good look for the club in general. I'd imagine it's slightly exaggerated in terms of certainly I know when he came back from his ankle surgery and Ryan Mason was in charge, Ryan Mason really we got to see some good Bissouma then. Bissouma kind of came back to the fore a little bit, played definitely his best football since he'd arrived at Spurs. And I know Mason played a big part in trying to start, I guess, making him feel an important part of things again. And obviously Postecoglou massively took that on with telling him pretty much straight off the bat how important it was going to be for him and how much of an inspiration he could be to the young players at the club. So, yeah, I don't think it reflects well, though, I'd say pre-Mason, whether that includes Stellini, whether that's definitely seems to be... There's a Conte quote, actually. He was asked about Conte, whether, he had a difference in opinion on football to Conte. And he said, yes, of course, it's true. There was a coach who I owe respect to because he helped me sign with Tottenham and that's it. But we didn't see football the same way. We didn't see football the same way, but he was the coach, the boss, and I have always shown him respect even now. So that was really just interesting how... And it happens everywhere. One of my favourite managers of the kind of modern era was Martin Jol. And Martin Jol, obviously, you'll know from previous things I've said, I got a good relationship with Martin. He's a really lovely guy. Had the pleasure of kind of interviewing him a fair few times over the years. And he was brilliant with players. Players would rave about him. But some of the players who didn't play under him would say that they kind of felt a little bit frozen out. Why can't I talk properly? Frozen out. And yeah, so it kind of, I guess, and I think under Poch, I feel like I remember, was it Toby Alderweireld kind of felt that at one point? It might have been when he came back from the that injury we spoke about. He felt a little bit frozen out at times. And I think naturally when you're out of the team, maybe that's the way you feel. Certainly, managers try to create this inclusive environment for even people that are out injured or whatever's kind of going on, or whether they're just not in the reckoning. And Postecoglou certainly tries to do that. I saw some good quotes from Ben Davies that I actually haven't taken down for this on international duty before his match, where he was talking about Postecoglou and just what an incredible coach he is and what an atmosphere has created. And this is Ben Davies, who has only started. That was his first Premier League start, wasn't it? Second Premier League start the other day. So he's certainly trying to get that atmosphere. And I think when you've got someone like Bissouma, who, let's be honest, when he's not getting silly yellow cards, is one of the best Premier League midfielders in the Premier League for me. He's absolutely can dominate matches. And actually, if you honestly have a little listen to, I did a piece, if you check on my Twitter timeline or any social media timeline I'm on, it'll have the interview. I kind of wrote a lot of it up. And he actually really had a great relationship with Chris Hughton as well. Obviously, you remember as not only a former Spurs player, but he was also assistant manager with Martin. And he had Bissouma when he was at Brighton and absolutely kind of became a bit of a father figure for him in the UK. It's really nice, the stuff he said. He calls him a beautiful human being. And Chris Hughton would just like buy him little kind of gifts at like Christmas and his birthday and things like that, just to make sure that he kind of knew that were people still thinking of him, and send him little messages of like geeing him up and motivating him. I don't think I've ever met anyone that's had a bad word to say about Chris Hughton. He always just seems like one of the nice guys of football. Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur women finished 1-1 at Leicester. That's just literally come up. But you don't need to know that. Again, I always make the mistake of updating you on latest things as if this is a live video for you when it's not. I do these in one take, as you can tell. It's very raw, no editing. But yeah, it's not live. So you'll know the result, I'm sure, if you're keeping an eye on all of that. So that was Bissouma. I did a little mini Q&A with Jack Clarke. It was, you'll remember him, obviously, played for Spurs for, how long was it, 3 years at Spurs? It was a weird one. I say a Q&A rather than an interview because it's one of those where we get this quite a lot as journalists. You get approached by some kind of company. It might be a betting company doing something with players. It might be a promotional sports brand company, something like that, anything it can be, and they kind of ask you, would you like to put a few questions to player A, B or C or whatever, and you think, well, if I can't be there, this is the next best thing. Obviously it means it's heavily, I was about to say they're heavily moderated and what do you call it, kind of redacted things and things like that, but in a way, sometimes when you sign up to do these things face to face, sometimes they'll ask for copy approval occasionally anyway. Not always, but sometimes, I guess, to protect their client. But yeah, this was one of these with Jack Clarke. And yeah, I think one of my questions, which was a really easy, like just a normal one, didn't end up coming back, the answer. It was just like kind of what does he make of the current Spurs, Postecoglou Spurs. And from my answer, I think he did answer it, but unfortunately it has to go through all these different channels. I think it even had to go through Sunderland as well. And I can understand the logic of that one because essentially I'm guessing Sunderland, if it was their decision, they want him to just focus on what he's doing now. And he's brilliant for Sunderland this season. If you're not aware what Jack Clarke's up to now, it's lovely. I love stuff like this because we all, as fans and media, we write off players that have played for the club and maybe haven't made an impact. And then when they go somewhere else and show the reason why the club bought them in the first place, it's I guess it's still lovely for Spurs because I think they get a little bit of knock-on money as well if he's sold. But he's got 9 goals in 16 matches in the Championship this season from the left wing. Last season, he got 11 goals and 14 assists as they reached the playoffs. I think Burnley tried to sign him, didn't they? Burnley made a string of bids for him in the summer that Sunderland kept rejecting as well. So Jack Clarke is a real player on the up. He's still only 22. It's fantastic. When you think about it, when he was at 3 years at Spurs, he played under Pochettino, Mourinho. I say played under, he trained under Pochettino, Mourinho, Mason, Conte. I remember always people telling me that he was one of the fittest players at the club. He just had a ridiculously good work ethic. But obviously he was out on loan, wasn't he? He went back to Leeds on loan as QPR, Stoke on loan as well. And obviously then he went on to Sunderland where he eventually signed permanently. He didn't make a single Premier League appearance for the club. I didn't realise that. I was looking back when I was writing up the answers I got back. He did make 2 appearances in the Europa League, 1 in the Conference League qualifying stage and 1 in the FA Cup. I think that was at Marine, wasn't it? I remember that match because loads of them, younger players, kind of got on there. You had Alfie Devine becoming the youngest ever goal scorer. You had Harvey White, I think, came on and played well. Obviously, it has to all be tempered by the fact that, of course, you're playing a team that was, I think, in the 9th tier of football. Brilliant occasion. That was such a good one. Although saying that, was it COVID? Was it during COVID times? So you only had the people that were watching from their gardens, I think, that overlooked the pitch. I feel like it was. And there was those journalists kind of separated in a stand. Oh my goodness, that feels like ages ago when we had to sit all like with loads of seats in between us. Different times, wasn't it? So yeah, what I did get to ask Jack Clarke was kind of about that time at Spurs, and he said it was a bit of a strange time. I learned under a lot of different coaches. There were a lot of players coming in and out. It was a transitional period for the club. But just being in the building every single day with top players like Son, Kane, Bale, they're the players you aspire to be when you're a kid, just sharing the training pitch with them and how to go about their day-to-day business. You can't help but be in awe of it. You had to apply yourself, learning from coaches at the top level. I wasn't playing every day, but I had to use that time frame to improve, and I tried to improve by almost mimicking these top players every single day. So I don't wonder that now, whether I'll be completely honest, I don't think I've watched him play this season. I've watched him play a couple of games last season. I wonder whether if you watch him, there's any little traits of Bale or Sonny, or maybe the finishing right now of Kane or Sonny. Yeah, honestly, anyone that watches Sunderland more regularly, do let me know. I'm intrigued to know whether we can actually see that in practice. I asked him also about having to work under so many managers in such a relatively short spell of time. And he said there were a lot of top managers. They all wanted different things. All managers in this day and age play a different style of football, and you have to be adaptable. You can only use it to learn. There's a reason they're top coaches, and there's a reason top players are there. You have to be a sponge and absorb everything. I tried to do that to the best of my ability. Every day I went into training, I applied myself and tried to get better. I just didn't have the platform to showcase that. I still use a lot of what I learnt there to this day, and maybe that's why I'm playing well. So yeah, it was interesting. Like I say, although obviously these quotes have to go through a load of channels to actually get back to me, I think there's quite some really nice stuff in there, especially about the copying players and even that, not having the platform to showcase himself, but maybe his experiences at Tottenham created the foundation for him to go on and do what he's doing now. And I have no doubt he's going to be in the Premier League probably next season at this rate. It'd be interesting whether, it is with... I don't know how Sunderland are doing in the Championship table right now. But certainly, he's clearly a talented player. It just didn't work for him at Spurs. We've seen so many players that have gone on and elsewhere to do things. I'm going to talk about some of them actually in a little bit, because I did a piece this week where I looked back on various players that had left the club and what they'd been up to. But actually, first, very quick, some of the highlights of the international break, highlights, lowlights, whatever you want to call them, really. Good things and bad things. Sonny scored an absolute cracker on Thursday as South Korea beat Singapore. It was just a classic Sonny goal. He cuts inside and curls it in the top corner. And honestly, the thing that is so incredible about Sonny is that he can do that with either foot. And we know the stories about him training, with his weaker foot and being able to score. That's why he can do that from either side. But my goodness, to be so consistently good about it, good in doing it, and so unpredictable because you don't know which side he's going to go. Hell of a player. There was a little worry. He went down in the second half holding his, I think I wrote it down, was it his right ankle? Yes, his right ankle. Looked in a bit of pain, kind of limped off the pitch as well for a bit, but he did come back on. Played the full 90 minutes, and then he actually jogged around the turf quite sprightly after the game, waving at all the fans. It was a Seoul National Stadium, where I think, if I remember correctly, that was where I was 2 years ago watching Spurs. So yeah, I mean, he did speak about it afterwards. He said, "I'm fine now. I don't like to lie down for a long time on the pitch. At that moment, I couldn't feel anything on my foot." By the way, Sungmo Lee, the South Korean journalist, you'll know that I often chat to. He kind of sent these all on to me from what Sonny said to the Korean media. Sonny also said, "It's not only me. All players have small injuries but still play for the team. We're making a team for the World Cup. I can't give up a game just because I feel pain. If I can't run anymore, then I can't do anything about it. But when I can run, I have to give 100% for the team." It was interesting. I don't know if you remember me saying a few weeks back that I was wondering whether the Korean fans didn't want Sonny to play in the friendlies. I think it was in the October international break. And I got very overwhelming response that they didn't. They almost feel like Klinsmann is overusing him at the moment. He's going to end up kind of running him into the ground. And I actually saw a fair few similar comments after the game, the South Korea game, that why, if he'd had a knock, were they keeping him on for the full 90 minutes and things like that? And bearing in mind, I think Sonny's goal was the third as well. And like I said, it won 5-0. So there was no need for him to play the full 90 minutes. So yeah, it's very interesting that Klinsmann's kind of, is he overusing him, especially as they've got another game faced China. It's away, isn't it? Yeah, it's away on Tuesday. And obviously everyone's going to be watching that. It was 8 goals in 12 Premier League games. Postecoglou and Spurs are not going to want to lose him at all for any amount of time. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? I understand it's a World Cup qualifying match and you've got to play your best player, but definitely if they can get into any kind of comfortable position, surely try and get him off that pitch. Again, why not do that against Singapore? So even if it's just resting him for the China game. I don't get it. But hey, there you go, Jurgen Klinsmann. A lot of interesting kind of debate about him as a manager. No doubt an incredible player, and obviously did a wonderful job as an international manager for Germany, but as a club manager, maybe not so great. Actually, USA, I think he got a bit of flack as well, didn't he, as being the international manager for them as well. So, yeah, and this is why whenever kind of people throw him into the conversation, whenever there's a Spurs manager kind of leaves, and you're kind of, no, please look up everything that's been said. I remember the things that they kind of said at Bayern. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's a bad coach or anything. But certainly I think he has some different ways that don't always go down well with players. I think that's probably the best way to say it. Who else? Rodrigo Bentancur, obviously another key name. We're all kind of waiting to see what was going to happen, because I think, if I probably mentioned it in the last video, Uruguay were playing Argentina. So Bentancur was going to come up against a certain Christian Romero, who we know doesn't hold back in his tackling. And neither is Giovanni Lo Celso, actually. He's a bit of a kind of a tough tackler as well when he kind of gets stuck in. So there was this worry. And also it's Marcelo Bielsa as well as the Uruguay manager. So it's like the perfect storm of players who may want to kick you, regardless of whether they're your club teammates, and also your manager who plays this high-octane brand of football, which is probably even more relentless than Postecoglou football. And it was like, oh, goodness, how's this going to go? And unexpectedly, but I think happily for a lot of Spurs fans and Postecoglou probably, Bentancur didn't start the game. He came off the bench. Came off the bench in the 62nd minute. Uruguay were already ahead at that point. Ronald Araujo had already scored for them. And actually in that goal, I've watched it back, Romero's actually caught out of position. One of those where he goes slightly higher up, about halfway between the penalty area and the halfway line. And he goes in for kind of a foot forward kind of challenge from behind on the attacker, and he didn't get there, and he kind of trotted back quite slowly. And they quickly swept up behind him and scored. Interesting, Romero had also played Peacemaker. It was a little bit of a brawl before that. I think it was something said about Messi, maybe. I can't remember. It was, I saw various sites talking about it, but I didn't really read into the details. But Romero went up the pitch and actually was playing Peacemaker. Shame couldn't do that against Chelsea, rather than what he actually did. So Bentancur came on the just after the hour mark, 62 minutes, and actually had a big impact in the game just in that brief amount of time. He made a really crucial tackle on Messi on the edge of the Uruguay box, and that then set Uruguay away up the pitch, and Darwin Núñez Liverpool scored the second goal. And that ended up being quite a kind of landmark victory in a way, because obviously a massive result for Uruguay away at Argentina, but also Argentina hadn't lost a game since the World Cup. Actually, have I got this here? A funny feeling. Yeah, they'd won 14 matches in a row. They'd won every single one, and that ended it. And Bentancur, he was good. He made 2 clearances, 2 interceptions, 1 headed clearance, one recovery on Messi, 1 pass into the final third, as well as 10 accurate passes with 1 off target and 20 touches of the ball. So all eyes now on whether he starts or just continues to build up his minutes from the bench. They've got Bolivia, Uruguay, in Uruguay, Tuesday night. I think it's 11:30 at night, our time, UK time. So all eyes on getting him back safely, because I still kind of feel that I would use him as the Maddison replacement, and it'd be great if he just, I don't know, even just maybe give him an hour. I know it's like scary, isn't it? But maybe give Bentancur an hour or 50, 55 minutes. And then he might be in a position then to start next Sunday against Villa, maybe. Who else? Pape Matar scored his first international goal for Senegal. First goal for his country. They beat South Sudan 4-0. I think it was quite an early goal, I think, if I remember correctly. Ben Davies, Joe Rodon and Brennan Johnson, albeit from the bench. Brennan Johnson played as Wales drew 1-1 against Armenia. I think Johnson came on, I've got it written down, 50th minute. Joe Rodon forced the own goal that kind of levelled things up. But did it level things up or they went ahead? I can't remember now. But ultimately 1-1's not great for Wales. It's not going to help them out massively. They're going to have to kind of rely on others if they're going to get any chance of Euro qualifying. Emerson had a difficult night. Emerson Royale. Brazil got beaten by Colombia 2-1. All his attention, understandably, was on Luis Diaz. His dad was in the crowd after, obviously, horrendous ordeal, being kidnapped. He was there for 12 days, I think it was. So he was in the crowd to watch him on. And, of course, it had to be that Luis Diaz scored 2 goals. It was all very emotional. But watched back the extended highlights is probably the best way to say it. I watched the game, and Emerson, unfortunately, for both goals was a bit iffy. The first one, I mean, to be honest, he'd already had a few warnings in the first half when Diaz had got by him a couple of times. Martinelli had put Brazil ahead. 75 minutes in, Emerson was really slow to get out across to Christian Borja. He had all the time in the world to whip in the ball for Diaz to head in unmarked. And it was only 4 minutes later, and Emerson just kind of lost Diaz behind him. Diaz ran in right behind him and headed the ball again in from James Rodriguez. Cross. Remember him. Where is he now? It turns out one of my pieces I was writing about a former Spurs player plays with him. I can't remember where it is. It might be in Turkey. Maybe not. I can't remember. But anyway, so yeah, not great. He played the full 90 for Emerson, and it was a big night for him because it was his first... I think I've got it here. It's been a while. First competitive minutes for Brazil since January 2022, so a long, long time. He's only played 2 friendlies since in March and then October of this year. So this was him back in competitive football, and it was not a great return, unfortunately. But people that did impress, England under-19s, is pretty much Spurs under-19s right now. Spurs got loads of players in that team, and they're smashing it. I think they're on a little mini kind of tournament they're playing in Marbella. And on Wednesday, they beat Romania 6-0. Jamie Donnelly, 2 goals. Will Lancashire won in his debut. I've got a feeling it might actually be his first ever international youth match. Maybe. Unless he's done some at an earlier age. But looking back, I couldn't find anything. So it could technically be his first England goal, which is fantastic for him. Alfie Dorrington and Ashley Phillips were both in defence together. Luca Gunter, the goalkeeper, was on the bench, didn't come on. Then yesterday... Jamie Donnelly, honestly, he's absolutely on fire, that young man. Scored the winner as England beat Japan 3-2. Will Lancashire had again scored, so 2-2 for him. International football clearly suits him. He's having a terrific time as well, Will Lancashire. Everyone, when he signed, spoke to so many people kind of that knew him and watched him at Sheffield United and kind of had these big things to say about him. And I think he had some injuries when he started, a little bit of a knee problem that needed essentially cleaning up and sorting out. And I think now you're seeing just how good a young striker he's going to be. He's now kind of at that stage where you keep an eye on him, seriously. Because he's a big lad. He's a big unit. It's not quite Valise size, but he is a big lad. And yeah, I mean, he's now gone into the international environment and he's scored 2-2. So, yeah, keep an eye. There might be one that maybe you see get a loan out somewhere if the path is blocked for him. But I suppose you've got this little line of young kind of strikers, haven't they, in recent years? You've had Troy Parrott, you've got Dane Scarlett, Will Lancashire. Junson Bell's very good as well. And obviously Jamie Donnelly is having the absolute season of his career thus far. I'm very aware that he's only, 18, 19 years old. But it's great. It just shows how much the development's going on now. You've got Alfie Dorrington started the game as well, that second one yesterday. Luca Gunter started in goal as well. I think Ashley Phillips, if I remember correctly, came on late on from the bench. So yeah, they were kind of the main highlights. Kulusevski's had a couple I think he's playing just actually now as I'm recording this. I'm sure it was like was that 5 o'clock kickoff? Might be later. I didn't see how Alfie Devine and Dane Scarlett for the England under-20s got on. I think they lost. I think they lost 2-0. So I don't think there's probably too much to write home about unless something major happened that I wasn't aware of. But they're the kind of the main highlights there. And hopefully for the first round of games, Bentancur and Sonny came through them. It was really weird. I just had no interest in the England game, which kind of shows that I normally have watched it in the past purely because there's a Spurs player involved. And now, obviously Harry Kane's not Tottenham. Madison was out injured. I watched the last 10 minutes. I kind of flicked back on after we were watching something else. And I came back to kind of watch the end and I almost forgot it was on. It was, look, I didn't miss anything. I think the first shot on target was the 84th minute. So I literally missed the only goal of the game, which must have been an own goal if it was the only no shots on target. So I wasn't even sure how the first goal was. I don't know about. It's different, isn't it? Different people see it different. I know some people are very patriotic and very kind of follow England religiously as they do their club, and some fans are very tribal and it's all about their club. Sometimes you think you find that maybe as you go further up in the league, so maybe like top 6 fans maybe are slightly less interested in international or the national team. Could be wrong. Let me know if I'm completely wrong. Whereas people maybe in clubs that are beneath that a little bit different. Like I've got a mate who's a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and he's a big England fan. I know someone that's a Luton fan that's a big England fan as well. So yeah, different people I guess see it in different ways. I think for me, maybe because I've got a little bit of a kind of weird mixed background in that my dad's English, my mum's Scottish. There's also some kind of Polish background to my family way back. I think on my dad's side, I think there might even be Russian as well way back. Yeah, so maybe, I don't know, maybe I've not always kind of had that very definite English kind of view on things, maybe. I don't know. Always like enjoy it in the tournaments, and of course you do, but I think I've just always been a bit Spurs mad since I was a kid, and it kind of consumed my thoughts. It does to the degree now I even work on covering them. So that was maybe international stuff. England under 19s, I think they've got a third game actually coming up as well. So get to see them getting plenty of minutes, hopefully no injuries. The other thing I wanted to talk about, only because of the slight knock-on effect, is what's happened to Everton this week. And again, don't worry, this isn't kind of about Everton. It's about maybe the more wider-reaching permutations for the Premier League and Tottenham as well. Everton, I was shocked at that. They went over their spending that they were allowed. I think it was by about 20 million, I think. I know that we throw that out there. It's like, ooh, but when it's only 20 million, when it's like, obviously 20 million is a huge amount of money. But I guess when you look at those silly transfers that go on at some of the clubs, 20 million actually doesn't seem that mad. But they got obviously a 10-point deduction and they're straight down there. And I think the other bigger implication of that is the fact that it kind of opens the door now for the likes of Leicester, Leeds, Burnley, all got relegated in previous seasons, to potentially sue them. I think we had it with, was it Sheffield United with West Ham, when they were found to have got Carlos Tevez and Mascherano a little bit kind of the wrong way round of doing it. So I feel like West Ham had to pay Sheffield United a load of money. Was it like 20 million? Ironically, 20 million. I think it's a long time ago. But yeah, it opens the door for that now. Then there's obviously the knock-on effect that we know Chelsea and Man City are under investigation for financial fair play stuff. Everton had were done for one charge and got 10 points. Chelsea are under investigation by the Premier League and FA over financial rule breaches during the Abramovich tenure, of course. And I think there's more stuff I saw in the last week that seems to be that might have been a whole other can of worms open there. And then you've got Man City, 115 charges of alleged breaches of the Premier League's financial rules. Obviously, they deny all wrongdoing, of course. But all you look at that, and if there's 10 points for Everton for one charge, what if City are found guilty of one charge of those 115? What if they're found more than that? I mean, there's been talk. I saw kind of, some of the reports suggesting that, what could they get? Could they, and this is Chelsea as well, could they get I saw one report claiming maybe a 30-point deduction. I saw another one talking about relegation. I saw another one talking about maybe expulsion from the league. Crikey. That would blow the whole league open, wouldn't it? Suddenly, if Man City weren't in it, my goodness. But I guess the other aspect to this as well is, for all the criticism Daniel Levy gets, and some cases certainly justified with certain decisions made, he has always had this drive to make Tottenham self-sustaining. With the stadium, the events, the commercial stuff, and everything goes on there. I know, and I've said this in the past in videos, it is putting all of the eggs in one basket because of this constant, he's been talking about this tightening of the financial rules that was coming in. So I get that. God, wouldn't it be mad if he ends up kind of being right about that other clubs end up being absolutely stuffed by it, and Spurs eventually kind of at this level where they're so self-sustaining that they can kind of, I guess you're always going to have the likes of, let's say, Man U, who are so globally renowned that they're, the revenue they bring in will help them do that. But yeah, I mean, I think even next year, I think the rules get even tighter. I feel like it's kind of a gradual snowball effect of the rules. Who knows? I was going to say about Spurs and finances. At this point, having looked on, again, as I always do on Company's House, there's certainly been no indication that they've taken the remaining £50 million of that capital increase from ENIC. You might remember me saying that the deal was extended into 2023. Originally, when you saw the press release that they put out, it was very much said it had to be drawn out by the end of the year, or drawn down, I can't remember the expression, by the end of the year, which was 2022 when it happened. But I kind of asked around and was told that the deal had been extended into 2023. So obviously, we're still in 2023. I still haven't had the answer back yet on whether that continues into 2024 or not. Obviously, we've seen some stories about Spurs not having much money for this window. Obviously, it would seem odd that 50 million isn't there still to be kind of drawn out, especially when it was offered. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, if I get any updates on that, if there's been a change either way, I'll certainly share that. But as of this point, I've heard no indication that it's been drawn out or been taken off the table or anything, but we'll find out. It's a difficult one because, obviously the expectation was that they spent a whack of the Kane money, kind of knowing it was coming in. Obviously, they spent 43 million on Van de Ven. Maddison was 40. I've now forgotten every single player that came in the door. Vicario was about 15 to 18, wasn't he? I feel like it was Brennan Johnson, of course. Brennan Johnson was an expensive. Was he 47.5 million right at the end of the window as well? Technically, and I know people don't like to hear it because you can argue it could have been on the previous one. They had to make the Porro deal and Kulusevski deals done, which were about 30 for Kulusevski, 40 for Porro, so that's another 70. There was another one, wasn't it? Velis was around between 10 and 15. Ashley Phillips was cheap. He was only about 2 to 3. Manor Solomon was free. I mean, even if you're just looking, I'm just going off transfer market figures here, which aren't, I don't think are going to be exact, but they've got technically 247 million and 247.6 million spent, although I think that's got that in euros, which obviously is slightly different. So yes, they did spend a fair bit in the summer if you look at it in that regard. But like I say, if there is still money to be drawn out, and I'm always wary about as well that the way you can kind of get around these things, especially with Spurs when they know the income that's going to be coming in the door, is that you arrange deals where it's up front. It's so rare in football that clubs actually pay all the money up front. So I guess you could kind of backload something, or you could do loans with obligations to buy. You could do loans with options, but those options are actually quite simple to activate if the player does everything you expect them to do. So I'm sure there's ways around that. And for the fact that Postecoglou has spoken so clearly about the need to continue to upgrade in this window, and especially we know they need another centre-back, I'd be stunned if Spurs go into this transfer window and don't do any business, or kind of really do like pauper business in a way. And I still think maybe, let's say you get Hugo Lloris does find a club and leaves. That's one of your top earners off the wage bill. Let's say even Perisic does go to Hajduk Split, which has been talked about potentially in the media. Then that's another big earner off your bill. So obviously you suddenly got this massive space of wages in there, which kind of frees you up in terms of financial elements as well. And who knows, someone might go, some other player might go. You still never know that. Sorry, one of my mates taking the Mickey out of someone on something we always find funny when a club puts out an interview with one of their own players and they say exclusive. It's like, well done. You walked across the corridor and got an exclusive with one of your own players who was there and set to do an interview as part of their contract. Anyway, sorry, bit of a detour there. So yeah, with Spurs, I don't think they can afford to kind of cheapskate this window. I know they've I do think they've spent a fair whack in the summer, and I do think that kind of gets slightly overlooked when you total it all up. But they still need to kind of keep improving, and I think the plans that Johan Lang, Rob McKenzie, Frederick Leth that's come in as well from Villa. All three of those will have put into place with Postecoglou for January. I'd hope it's not restricted on what they can do. Obviously, you can have some restriction. You can't just go crazy because just to try and prize anyone away from other club. But I'd hope that they sign someone that makes a difference to Postecoglou's squad. At least one, I'd say a centre-back and an attacking player myself that you need. Obviously, we know that with Bissouma, Sarr away at the Africa Cup of Nations, Sonny away at the Asian Cup as well, you're going to have kind of holes in your team throughout January, really, which might make it more difficult if Højbjerg did want to leave, or let's say Skippy wanted to go on loan maybe, or maybe even you wanted to loan out Valise to get him some game time. It's going to cause some issues, and obviously we don't know entirely when Maddison and Van der Ven are going to be back yet, so I think you are going to have to put some moves into place there. So we'll see. We shall see. Like I say, if I get any update on that, I shall provide an update. I did a piece this week on, I looked up, it was a bit of a labour of love. When was it? Oh, it was yesterday. Yesterday, it was Saturday. I looked up the 33 players that have left Tottenham Hotspur permanently, the first team players that have left the club since the Champions League final. So that goes all the way up to Kane, Winks in the recent window. Like the likes of Bergwijn in there as well. Going all the way back, really, as well, back to 2019. And just some little kind of things that I'd picked out of it that I must admit, some of them I have kind of lost a little track on what they've been up to. Like, I was not aware that Paulo Gazzaniga is smashing it in Spain. Girona, who have just, they're top of the league, top of La Liga. They've scored more goals than Barcelona and Real Madrid. They're right up there. They've only lost one game, and that was to Real Madrid. And Gazzaniga is their goalkeeper. There's a lovely little story. They were relegated. They weren't sorry, not relegated. They won promotion a couple of years back. They were 6th in Segunda Division as well, and got up through the playoffs. Then came up to La Liga, and if you thought they were going to have problems, they didn't. They finished 10th, and now this season they're absolutely flying. And yeah, Gazzaniga is their goalkeeper, so that's really great for him. Kind of had an interesting. He was just there when Lloris, I guess, was at his peak and just never really got... He got that chance, didn't he, when Lloris was out with the elbow injury. I think people look back on that slightly romantically. I always thought Gazzaniga did really well when he came in on the odd occasion, but I felt that when he had a run of games, perhaps he wasn't quite as good as those games wore on. You saw little mistakes. I remember him having a mare against Chelsea, doing some daft things. But on the whole, a decent keeper. I don't think he was ever going to be Spurs number one. But obviously he's gone off to Girona and he's having a terrific time there. It's fantastic. What else did I find? There was a real common theme, depressingly, that a lot of them have gone on to win trophies. And then look, of course you could say what level have they won trophies at, who have they won trophies with, whatever you want to say. But my goodness, so many people have won trophies, and quite quickly after leaving Spurs as well. Lucas has already won a trophy. He won the Copa do Brazil with Sao Paulo, and then he picked up an injury. He's been out the last couple of weeks, but I think he's on his way back. And I love the fact that Vincent Janssen and Toby Alderweireld played together at Royal Antwerp, and they've had a brilliant time as well, especially Alderweireld. I mean, Janssen scored a fair few goals, but if you remember, he went to back to his hometown club Antwerp as well. Alderweireld won the Belgian Cup with them, and then scored that dramatic... Do you remember he scored that kind of like a rocket goal, wasn't it? 94th minute. They drew 2-2 against Genk at the end of last season, and they won the title. The first time in 66 years they've won the title. And now, I think they beat AEK Athens in the Champions League playoffs, and they're in the group stage of the Champions League for the first ever time. So, Big Vinny and Toby Alderweireld absolutely loving it life in Belgium. Who else did I find? Gedson Fernandes, do you remember him? Gedson has been working his way across Turkey mainly in recent years. Played for various clubs out there. I think he might be at Besiktas at the moment. Who else? Victor Wanyama's still playing. I must admit, because he obviously had knee issues, I thought he maybe wasn't still playing. I completely lost track of him. He's still playing for Montreal in MLS. He was set to leave them and then suddenly signed a new 2-year deal. So, yeah, he's playing with them. I don't think he's the regular this season. Like he was last... Was it him that's regular? I might be mixing up my midfielders. I looked up Moussa Sissoko as well, who went to Nantes a couple of years back. He was a regular last season as they just escaped relegation, and now he is a bit more bit part player this season. So maybe I'm mixing him up with Wanyama. There were so many players I looked up yesterday, honestly. A lot of their stats and clubs and stuff started to kind of roll into one. George's Kevin Nkudu, he went straight away and won the league in Turkey. I think he was at Besiktas, actually. He is now in the Saudi Pro League with Damac, where he's already got 6 goals and 2 assists in his first 12 matches. Nkudu, who knew? So he's doing well. Who else did I look up? Josh Onoma, he's a free agent at the moment. He was at Fulham, obviously had an injury issue there, and he kind of fell out of favour a bit. He was there for a good 4 years, then he went to Preston briefly, but he's now floating around as a free agent. Danny Rose, I was looking it up. I kind of had a mini chat with Danny Rose, watched him play in the Steve Jukes, the kit man at Spurs charity match at Bishop Stortford in, was it May? I'm trying to remember now. And he looked absolutely like he could still play football. He's only 33 years old. And I looked it up because I presumed, again, because I've seen him as a pundit, that he'd retired. He has not retired. He's still playing. He's still kind of, I think he's a bit like Andros Townsend, who was out for a while and obviously is now rocked up back at Luton and playing again. So I don't know whether Danny Rose will suddenly see playing again or not. But yeah, I found that really, really interesting. Like I say, 33 different players. Have a look on my Twitter feed. It's on there. Just knowing what they're doing now is mad, some of them. I didn't realise what they're up to. It's all good. Right, let's go to your questions before we have a little mini look at Villa. So, what we got here? Okay, all right. Oh, going back into the Everton situation, but in terms of Dele. What the Blazes, great username there, asks, given Everton's situation and then wanting to renege on the Dele deal, is there any part of you that feels that we should just take Dele back? So actually, just because I forgot to say this earlier, there was some, I think it was Paul Brown, very good journalist, said that in the submission that Everton made to the Premier League, they said that they felt Spurs had taken advantage of them of their situation by getting Richarlison for £60 million when he was worth £80 million. Hey, I hope that Richarlison is worth £80 million at some point. I think he's got 2 Premier League goals since he signed for £60 million 18 months ago. So I don't think he's quite at that mark just now. But I would even say back then, £80 million would have been ridiculously high for Richarlison. And like I say, I still hope he becomes a big player for Spurs. You know, once he gets his, recovers from his surgery that he's had on his pubic bone, that he comes back pain-free and absolutely shows everyone what he's made of. But I'm sorry, £80 million. Back to Dele. Dele, it's one of these Hart overhead kind of things. Do I think Dele in his prime would have fitted the Postecoglou system? Absolutely. Dele he could play in either of the kind of slots up front. He could play in either of the midfield slots as a number 8. It'd have been fantastic. I just think that would be a big leap for him right now. Obviously, he's been very brave about talking about his off the field struggles. He's had an injury that's kept him out for a long time, and now he has this situation with Everton at Spurs where if he plays not too many more games, then Everton have to owe Spurs a fair old whack of money for him, having got him for free. So, yeah, I think Dele needs to go and rebuild his career, maybe away from the limelight that Spurs would bring. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Next one, Evets B000. I posted my thoughts on time-limiting VAR checks last week after the Chelsea game. What are your thoughts on that, Alistair? Oh, you've butchered the spelling of my name there, which is absolutely fine because I absolutely butcher the pronunciation of pretty much everyone's name. So that's Alistair. Technically, mine's the Scottish way of spelling it. Alistair. It's my mum's fault. Limiting VAR check. I think you have to eventually, but does that also mean technically you're making them rush the decisions, which goes against the point of VAR in the first place? I'd just be happy to go back to what we were. I'd shove in Goal line technology is fine, and I would shove in automated offside checks if they can get that technology right, and that's it. Everything else, I think, leave to the opinion of the referee and the officials there. That's just my thoughts. Pepperdice19 asked, the new stadium is no doubt a marvel. That said, now a few years removed, what do you miss most about White Hart Lane? White Hart Lane, I miss going with my dad. My dad's no longer with us. He's been gone a little while now. That's what I miss most about White Hart Lane. If people have heard me say this before, I'm sorry to bore you. White Hart Lane was my stadium with my dad. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for me is my kind of baby in a way, in following it through the construction, doing the videos I used to do on that as well. That kind of had this it does. It feels a little bit like my baby, whereas White Hart Lane was the place I went. I reported on Spurs there, obviously, for a couple of years before it shut. 3 years maybe there before it shut. Demolished. But to me, it was always the place I went with my dad as a kid, as a fan. So that, I guess, the emotion, I suppose, that's what I miss most. Jordan Hussein asked, you can rewrite the ending to a film. Which film and why and how? Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I hated the ending to that. And you know me, I'm a massive Indiana Jones fan. And I really liked a lot of the rest of the film. I did, some moments where it got a bit silly, but I enjoyed it. I just felt the ending was just like, oh, come on. I know it was in keeping with the B-movie aspect of it all, but yeah, I even remember when Harrison Ford was talking about it, and apparently George Lucas convinced him and George Lucas, they're not aliens. It's not an alien movie. They're interdimensional beings. I think that says everything about that ending to me. I would have just brought it into a more of an ending, although I guess the latest one had an even more kind of bigger flight of fancy. I suppose they all have, technically. I just didn't like the ending. I couldn't tell you exactly what I'd change it to, but something better. James Cheffins 7127 asks, do you think there's a future for Tanganga and Skip at Tottenham, and is there a better link from the academy to the first team now? First question, Tanganga, potentially not, because I think Augsburg have got an option to buy him. I don't think he's played a game for them yet. He's arrived with a knee problem. So if he plays well and merits them taking up the option, then no. And I think for his sake as well, I think he needs to move anyway. Skippy, absolutely, I do. There's this one chap that comes in, I'm sure he'll come in again most weeks. Even when I haven't mentioned Oliver Skip, he kind of has a pop. He just always says in the comments, you love Oliver Skip, I hate him, he's rubbish, why can't you see that? Something I'm massively paraphrasing, like essentially just rubbishing Oliver Skip every week. Even when I've made no mention of him. It's very strange. Skippy, yeah, I think it may be a little bit like the Norwich loan. I think he might have to go away to rebuild himself in a way and then come back with game time under his belt. It may be that in January he gets kind of time to play with the various absences. It's a difficult one because I guess in the Postecoglou system, he kind of would have to operate as a number 6. I don't think he suits the number 8 roles as well. He can play a nice pass and he can run into the box and do, saw against Barcelona scoring a couple of goals. But I think that's something he's going to have to hugely work on rather than it being a natural element to his game. So I still think there's a future for him. I guess it depends how much he adapts and whether he gets an opportunity at number 6, which I think there's probably a few players ahead of him right now. Simon R. Brown 1 asks, how realistic... Oh, sorry, there's another question, wasn't it? And is there a bit of a link from the academy to the first team now? Yes, and I think that's because of the manager. I think it's as simple as that. If the manager really looks to the academy, then I think that naturally creates that link. And you've got Simon Davies, obviously, as the head of the academy, who's trying to have this close relationship now with Postecoglou, who, remember, told me off a little bit in the last presser for suggesting that... what I said was, are you going to get a little bit more of an opportunity with these injuries to have a closer look at some of the younger academy players? And he goes, I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I hadn't already done that. So quite right too. But yeah, he mentioned about Simon Davies as well. So yeah, I think the link's there, and I think that's just because you've got a manager who is quite happy to look at younger players, whereas maybe his permanent predecessor was not so inclined. Simon Brown 1 asks, how realistic do you think the Saudi links are for Richarlison? Do you see us signing another central striker soon? Son down the middle has been a breath of fresh air, but he's 31 and we're one injury away from having problems up top as well as at the back. With Richarlison and Saudi links, I guess it depends what the offer is. If the offer comes in and it's a biggie, hey, 80 million apparently is what he's valued at, then I think maybe all parties would look at it. Because obviously, if you look at the 18-month spell, he has not proved himself yet at Tottenham Hotspur. So I guess if Spurs were to make their money back, maybe they take it and they reinvest it into the squad. Although Postecoglou, has said previously he really likes Richarlison, and I guess it would depend on whether he wants to go to that league. I guess there's a few Brazilians that have gone over there as well, so it would be that he'd have fellow countrymen there. Obviously, if he went, you definitely would see another central striker coming in soon. I think a lot depends on Velisa's development over the coming weeks and how he fits in, and whether he gets into position where he's ready to play. I mean, technically, Postecoglou did say it would be in 2024 you'd kind of see him getting more minutes. He actually said any minutes to begin with, but obviously injuries have kind of forced his hand a bit there. I think I would imagine Spurs will go for a centre-back and an attacking player that can play out wide or through the middle. That's, if I was them, I'd look for. You need someone, obviously, you've got Manor Solomon's going to be out for a while. You don't know when Maddison's back. You've got Perisic out probably for the season. I feel like I'm missing someone. Obviously, Richarlison's out for now, but he'll be back hopefully in a couple of weeks. I think you look for someone that's kind of versatile, a bit like a Brennan Johnson that can play anywhere across the front three. You look for another guy like that. That's my answer on that one. It's Astel asks, is there even the slightest chance of the Qataris looking to buy Spurs? Would you want this move to happen? Oof. That's a minefield, that one. I don't know. I think that would be the bridge that we'd have to cross when we get there. I don't know. Certainly, was it QSI, Qatari Sports Investments, is that who it was? Had some early, not even discussions, but that had been spoken about, I guess is the way to put it. But obviously that didn't end up going anywhere. We'll see. I don't think it's something you can rule out, absolutely. Especially when you see other clubs, there's people coming in for them and they're not getting to buy those other clubs. So obviously their attentions will turn elsewhere. I think with Spurs, it's an expensive package because you've got the stadium involved as well. And obviously you're automatically taking on that long-term debt as well. And you've presumably got all of the real estate they own in the area as well. Even that's all complicated at the moment as well. There's compulsory purchase order that's gone in from Harrogate Council for some of the stuff that Spurs ENIC own, which has not gone down very well, obviously, because it's for a scheme that Spurs didn't agree with in the first place. Harrogate obviously want to regenerate the area. Spurs don't think they're doing it the right way. It's a right old minefield right now. So, I think we have to say, I think it's one of those you have to cross that bridge when you come to it and fully kind of dive in and research everything you possibly can. At this point, I wouldn't say I'm kind of in the position to know enough, I guess, is the way to put it. Adam, there's a load of different questions here. Adam Harris asks, in hindsight, do you feel Spurs should have kept Joe Rodon until January? He's playing really well for Leeds. No, because I think you had to let him go and play football. He is doing superbly for Leeds. They love him at Leeds. They want to keep him. He's been a key player on Daniel Farke this season. Obviously, would have helped right now. Would he have fitted the Postecoglou system? I don't know. I mean, Postecoglou, to be fair, didn't even look at him in pre-season, really. He used him in training sessions, but didn't even give him I don't even know if he got any minutes during the friendlies. He was, when we were there on the tour, you could see him training with the we called them the bomb squad, the players that weren't really going to get a look in with the squad. Now I think Rodon will go to, the way he's going, I think he'll go to Leeds next summer and Spurs at least get some money for him. And I think he'll become a decent Premier League defender. He's a good player. He's a good player, Joe Rodon. I kind of always felt he a little bit unfairly dealt with at Spurs. Kind of brought in almost as seen as the cheap version of Skriniar and then never really given much of a chance other than in emergencies. Another quick one from it. It's Astel because it caught my eye. How is your Duolingo training coming along. Did Conte being the manager influence you to learn Italian? No. Duolingo's fine. I'm on a streak of about 600 and something days. Is it 600? Might be 500. I can't remember. No, it was my wife. My wife started doing it about 3 months before me. And we like popping across to Italy. I live reasonably close to Stansted Airport, and there's always really cheap flights to Italy. And I'm talking like 30 quid, 40 quid return. So we kind of, when we get a chance, pop over to Italy because we really love it there. And so, yeah, that's all. I just thought it would be quite handy if I could pick up some of the lingo. Chris Day 1274 asks, where do you think Sonny will finish on the club's all-time top scorer list? I'd back him to reach third and sit alongside Kane and Greaves, but that might require another contract extension. I'd be stunned if Spurs don't try to tie down Sonny to a new contract. I think, yeah, he could get up to there. Could get up there to third. I mean, playing in a central role, he's going to score a lot of goals under Postecoglou. Why not? You've got to aim high. Good question. Adam Harris, you put in about 1 million questions. I've answered one already about the £50 million. If Sonny is subbed, who's vice captain for the next 2 games? It's a good question because obviously now Madison Romero. I would imagine if Højbjerg is playing him, and he's certainly looking for more leadership from Bissouma, maybe you would. Although it's a bit of an ask, isn't it? Especially when he's had a couple of suspensions for silly little yellow cards. I guess if Ben Davies is playing, maybe Ben Davies gets it. Who else we got here? I have to move on. Sorry, Adam Harris, you've asked so many questions, but I've got loads of other people that have asked them, so I've got to answer. There's Tim Helly 5601. Describe your relationship with your source at the club. Do you send an email to find things out? How is the information given to you? Are there ways you're asked to say the information you get to your audience? Okay, that's interesting. First thing I would say is source, singular. That's not really how it works. You get to know a lot of people that work in not only Spurs but various football clubs, because obviously people leave Spurs and they go to other clubs, or you just know people in the game naturally. I've been a journalist for 20 years, sports journalist for about 15 years. So I built up a fairly decent, it's technically you call it contacts book, but it's not a contacts book anymore, obviously. It's all on your phone or in the cloud, I guess. So yeah, I can't really describe your relationship with your source because there's lots of people I know at the club, and there's lots of people that I can go to kind of find out various bits and pieces and info. And obviously there's certain things that are sensitive and they're just never going to get out there. There's certain things that sometimes people want to clarify to make sure the wrong thing isn't out there. And then, look, you know what? I've said this a billion times. I always double source things. I always do. I don't like to or want to run anything that has come from a single source because that can be very iffy. So obviously if I've spoken to, be it an agent, be it a manager of a player, be it a relative of a player, be it just someone in the industry, be it someone within Spurs, I'll always look to try to double up with someone else that would know about the situation. So that's kind of the way that relationships work. You never burn them, you never give away who they are, you never write anything that puts them in a tricky situation with anyone else. I don't send emails really. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. It doesn't really work like that in today's world. It's mostly phone calls, so that nothing. I guess people sometimes don't like stuff being written down. I think that's kind of the whole point because you can that can be held against them if a relationship turns sour. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, mostly phone calls. Sometimes WhatsApps. Sometimes voice notes. Sometimes people do on WhatsApp. You can do the 24 hours it disappears thing. It's all very like a spy. It's like Mission Impossible. This message will self-destruct in 10 seconds or whatever. What was the last bit? Are there ways you're asked to say the information you get to your audience? No, I think, to be honest, it's more having a sense of responsibility yourself. So, like, for example, sometimes I might have an idea of what the team might be ahead of a big game. Just through various ways. Sometimes players know and they tell people around them that they're going to start. Sometimes it can come from within the club, whatever. But I think there's a part of me that then doesn't want to put that out there before a match because it helps the opposition. So, look, I know not all journalists are going to be like that. Obviously, that's the Spurs fan inside me, not wanting to help the opposition. So I'm less likely to do that. Sometimes in my predicted team, you might see that it's more accurate more often than not. I don't know. That's not to say it's always going to be the right team. Absolutely not. But sometimes I'll know something and I don't want to look like I had no idea. I guess that's a little bit of a pride thing. But on the whole, that's just a prediction. It's not me saying this person is going to play. And things can also change at the last second. So yeah, I guess it's more about responsibility and it's about information, even sometimes about a transfer. Like, is it worth putting out news about a transfer that little bit earlier and maybe just alerting anyone that might not have been aware that it's going to happen? Look, if an agent's probably doing his job properly, he's making sure that every club possible is aware that their player is available or whatever. But I guess there are some times when clubs try to do things quite quickly, and you just want to have that responsibility because you don't want to be the guy that kind of essentially messed up a transfer as well. So, and obviously there's other stuff. There's, when it comes to injuries, everyone's very desperate to know the ins and outs of injuries, and that's absolutely understandable. But also there's a confidentiality aspect to it. It's a patient-doctor kind of side of things, and it's very, sometimes you don't, even if you find something out, you don't really want to put it out there unless the player or the club is happy for it to be out there. So I think that's more the elements to it. So no, I don't think anyone's really ever kind of said what you can say or what isn't there to be said. Once in a while, the club might put out to various journalists about trying to clarify something maybe that they feel is wrong in the media. But again, it's the same thing as always. I wouldn't take that on face value, even if it's coming from, a good source. I would double source it because, you don't want to be used for anything. It's like I said, I've been in it a long time now, and I can always tell when anyone is trying to tell me something that I can, okay, you're coming at this from a certain angle though, and that's why you have to kind of double it up just to get a more objective view on it as well. So hopefully that made sense. So yeah, it's not quite as easy as, sending an email to someone. Spurs Simpsons, would a loan for Villiers make sense for his long-term development? Depends what opportunity he's going to get this season. If the pathway isn't there for him, and they do sign another player that can play in the central striking role this January, then yeah, maybe you do try and get him out on loan at either in England or at a similar-ish league, maybe the Bundesliga, something like that. But I kind of feel he might be best served just by staying this season at least at the club and learning the Postecoglou way. Craig2565 asks, do you see Spurs still in the top four after they've faced Brighton and reached the halfway stage of the season? So Brighton is the 28th of December, isn't it? Ooh, there's some tough games coming up. It depends if Postecoglou has used this period to really kind of get a handle on how he's going to cover for the absences of Van der Ven and Maddison. Yeah, I'm going to say yeah. I think they will be. Van Football Vents, if you were to take a punt on who will end up signing in January, who would it be? I think it will be Lloyd Kelly and Jota. Both very good suggestions. Lloyd Kelly, I'd be stunned if they don't look at again. Obviously, he's playing pretty regularly for Bournemouth, so I don't think he would be cheap. It'd depend if Bournemouth... This is the whole part, I said this in the last video. It's about having the plan in place with this new recruitment trio of identify who you want quickly, let the club you want to buy from know quickly, and then that move suddenly doesn't become pants, we've got to try to replace this player. It becomes okay, so we've got this potential to sell him there. Let's look at our replacement options. Can we get someone that we feel is an upgrade, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, I wouldn't say they're the two, I'd say they'd be certainly two players you'd think Spurs would look at. I think that's the way to say it. Lloyd Kelly, certainly. I know they like Trevor Chalobah as well. I don't know whether Chelsea would send him to Spurs, but obviously he's been injured, hasn't really played a part under Pochettino. And again, I think they find a creative kind of deal where they buy a player who, will cost them a fair whack, but maybe that money's spread out a little bit, perhaps. I don't know. Josh Morse 6428. If you could pick one current Spurs player to have the same hairstyle as you, who would it be? I think your hair always looks perfect. Oh, it's certainly not perfect hair. And it's I've got to get a haircut tomorrow, actually. It's we can't really see it too badly on here, but the grey or white, whatever, is definitely coming in the temples big time. So I don't know, am I putting my hair on someone else or their hair? I'll pick it as taking their hair. Toby Alderweireld always used to have immaculate hair, isn't he? Current Spurs player, though. Sonny's always got great hair. I always remember when I was in a Pochettino press conference and one of the journalists asked Pochettino who had the best hairstyle in the Spurs squad. I think he might have said Toby. I'm trying to think of all the hairstyles right now. I'll go with Sonny. Sonny's got great hair. Yeah, I'll go for that. What else we got? Kalik Kayal 6671 asks, will you ever upload these videos as audio only podcasts for people who like to listen as a podcast on their phone and browse the internet for Spurs stuff at the same time? No, is the answer. Certainly not in the immediate future. And I've answered this before. The reason is because I do a podcast with Rob Guest, with Guesty, called Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. Available on all good podcast platforms. So no, I wouldn't ever put this out as an audio only one because I'd just be competing with myself and my own work. So no. So that's there if you want that just to be an audio only thing. Apparently, I think if you download YouTube, if you have YouTube Premium, you can download these and listen to them, or it doesn't. I can't remember, or it doesn't turn off when you're listening to it. I'm not sure. I would imagine that most people who watch these probably just have it on in the background while they're doing other stuff. That's certainly what I would do. So it ends up kind of being a podcast anyway in aspects. So, but yeah, to answer your question, that's the reason no. Rueri Woods asks, I noticed once you quoted Big Trouble in Little China in a video. Where do you stand on that film and John Carpenter in general? I love that film. It was one of my favourite films growing up. It was just brilliant. I'm really looking forward to watching, what's it called? Monarch, the new Monsters Universe Godzilla series, because it's got Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell. Apparently, it's fantastic. They're playing the same character at different stages of their life, and it's actually like a really good series. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, Kurt Russell in that is just amazing. It's just a brilliant film. John Carpenter in general. Do you know what? I watched The Thing for the first time. For some reason, it's one of those I've just never got around to watching. Only a couple of weeks ago, I watched it for the first time. Yeah, I like John Carpenter's work. Although I haven't seen Escape from New York films, or Escape from, was it Los Angeles, the other one? I haven't seen those. So, but certainly really enjoyed The Thing watching it, and Big Trouble in Little China is just right up there for me. Pure kind of 80s, I guess it must have been 80s. Yeah, I love that film. Just brilliant. Bielbo Baggins, or another journalist and source question. Journalist question, why do sources give you information? What's in it for them? I guess, yeah, maybe it's that element of having the correct and the right information out there. I think that's a big thing. I think maybe that's always been my kind of angle, is that sounds really cliched and cheesy, but I kind of want to be the purveyor of truth. You've heard me say it a billion times, I've not really got an interest in being always the guy that's there first. You know, I get there first a fair few times with various bits and pieces, which sometimes I think people don't realise that I was there first with them. But on the whole, I'm just more interested in being right. That's more important to me than anything, really. And I think that's kind of been my whole MO. And so building up sources, I think they know that if I'm coming to them, it's because I want the right information to be out there. I want to kind of, whether it's about their client, their player, whether it's about the club, whether it's about whatever, is getting the right information out there, regardless of how we kind of get there. And I think that's a big element of it. Obviously, you get some sources that kind of, I guess in a way, kind of want to show what they know. You've got that, and of course, like I say, you have to always double source it. But on the whole, it's to provide clarity for things. It could be, yeah, it could just be to kind of, there could be, I think there's a PR side to it as well. But yeah, it's a lot of that. And it's agents obviously want to push their players out there as well. Sometimes it is to tell you the interest, which is true, in their player, so that either the club they're at sometimes will get a new contract or want to give them a new contract, or another team will come in. There's so many different. Everyone's got an angle in football, pretty much. That's kind of seems to be the way that I've found over the years at almost every level. I think that's probably unfair. In non-league, there's a lot of volunteers who did it just for the love of the game. But as you get up the ladder and the money's involved, it all gets a little bit different. That reminds me of watched last night, Air, the Ben Affleck directed. How Nike managed to sign up Michael Jordan. It was so much better than I expected to be. I knew it was going to be good. People had told me it was a good film. I really enjoyed it. I thought Matt Damon was brilliant. Chris Tucker was really good in it as well. Jason Bateman. I like Jason Bateman and everything. I listened to Smartless podcast he does with Will Arnett and Sean Hayes, isn't it? That's really good. Enjoyed it. People have asked me before, do I listen to football podcasts? I used to. I've actually gone away from listening to football podcasts now. I think I like to go into a separate headspace when I listen to podcasts now. So I've worked my way through Talking Sopranos. I was into The Office Ladies for a while as well. The Entourage one was at Victory. And now I'm working my way through Smartless. Louis Theroux sometimes as well. Sorry, it's a completely different answer. How in the world I got to that? Oh, I think it was because of the angle. And in Air, everyone had a different angle of what they were trying to get out of Michael Jordan. It made me immediately want to watch The Last Dance again. And I loved the way, I hope this isn't spoiling it in any way, because you know what happened with Michael Jordan. But I love the way the film never really shows Michael Jordan as a young guy. It kind of, apart from the actual proper archive footage, he's almost like this entity, this being. It's a really good film. Fantastic film. What else we got? Lee Spurs asks, is there any chance we can sign Tapsoba in January? I'd imagine that would be incredibly difficult now, purely because he signed a new contract not long after the transfer window closed. Eric P331 asks, knowing Ange's system and having watched loads of teams in Championship, League 1, League 2, which 3 or 4 in each could help Spurs loans the most? Would a certain Welsh club coming by a couple of Hollywood actors be on your list? God, that's a massive question. That's far too involved for this. It's a very good question, don't get me wrong. It's an excellent question. And I don't think it really works like that. I think sometimes clubs are also suit a player. I think ones like Ipswich with Dane Scarlett, that's a really good move for him, despite the fact that he's not starting matches, because they're playing in a really attacking, nice way of football that's very similar. And he's got Kieran McKenna, the manager there, who loves him. So as the season goes on, he's going to get more and more game time. So sometimes it's not always about the overall team just to fit people in. Sometimes it's about what might suit a player and where they're going to get a certain amount of minutes, where they're going to develop, where they have a coach that maybe really likes them. I think it's a little bit more to that, but it is a really, really good question. That's that. That one. That's not a question for this. Okay. Anthony Petty 9288. Regarding our young strikers, what are your thoughts about those out on loan? And do you think they'll get a chance in the first team? Comparing them to players in the under-21s, will we see one of our own up front soon? We kind of touched on that earlier, because obviously Troy Parrott's away, starting to really kind of hit his stride now at Excelsior Rotterdam. I watched extended highlights of the game. He got an assist in the other day just before the international break started, and he was really good. He had so many opportunities. If anything, he had a couple of distance efforts that should have gone in. Oh, sorry, the keeper saved very well, but there's a part of me, if I'm completely honest, I fear that maybe Troy's kind of opportunity maybe has gone at Spurs. I would love to be wrong, because I do think he's going to develop into a very good young striker. But I just wonder whether there's too many bodies in front of him, and just the fact that he didn't really get much of a kind of a chance to have a look in the summer. And it was awkward. He had a kind of an injury that didn't really help him ahead of the tour. I think maybe Dane Scarlett, I know Postecoglou really likes, so he's certainly going to get a chance. We'll see what he's like next summer if he comes back and when he comes back and kind of where he's at. Jamie Donnelly is writing his own script right now. Absolutely, he could have he's kind of forcing his way. If he keeps going as he is and winning these awards in Premier League 2 and scoring the silly amount of goals he's doing for club and country, you have to look at him. You have a duty to reward him for what he's doing. And then, like I say, you've got Will Lancashire, Judson St Bell. I would imagine that both Lancashire and St Bell you'll see loans for soon. It's a difficult one because the under-21s are flying, and you obviously also want that team to keep on flying as well. And even in the future, you've got young Micky Moore, who's only a kid. I mean, he's 16. Obviously, one for the long term. So, yeah, it's a difficult kind of question to ask that because they're all very different strikers as well. And then you've got Alejo Velez as well, of course, who is still going to kind of make his name. Obviously, he's not academy product, but another young player there. So I was trying to think, make sure I haven't missed anyone really obvious out as well. No. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think a lot of them will still have chances. Troy, I know he was desperate to come back, certainly this summer and make an impact. He can only go away and score lots of goals. If he scores a load of goals in the Eredivisie in the remainder of the season, which to be fair, the way he seems to be warming up, I think that might happen. And then we'll see where we're at with the summer with Troy. I hope he still has a chance. I just worry that there's a few players coming through now, and with Velez's arrival as well, when it just makes it too difficult for him. We'll see. Republic of Ireland international as well. What else we got here? Robbie01483. Have you heard anything on Manor Solomon's fitness and when we can expect him back? No, I think wasn't it so like 3 to 4 months? It was quite a long one. So I'm trying to remember when that happened now. Feels like an age ago, doesn't it? Again, I don't know. Only because I can't remember when he did the injury, so I don't want to put a time frame on it that doesn't actually make any sense. TVG CMMA. I don't think you can actually say that. 9215. Do you think the current top 5 will be how it finishes? Not necessarily in that order. Have you seen the Marvels yet? Really enjoyed it. As for the current top 5, I think Chelsea are going to improve under Poch. I think they will. I think they might force their way in there. Other than that, yeah, maybe. Marvels, no, I haven't seen yet. I've technically got a couple of days off this week. I'm going to pop up to see my mum up in Scotland for a couple of days, and I'm going to try to go to cinema. Hopefully I'm going to go and see that, which apparently all the reviews seem to suggest is better than people were expecting. So that's good, especially as I think it had reshoots and was chopped around and edited a bit. Okay, good one. Drew Dutton 294. I'm curious about Bryan Gil. He seems like he would bring a lot of ideal attributes as a Postecoglou winger if given more minutes. How do you foresee his next few weeks playing out given Madison's injury, the Africa Cup of Nations afterwards, and all the festive fixtures to come? I think he's got to get game time. He's had a couple of little very brief cameos, hasn't he, in the last couple of weeks? I hope he gets a chance. I still have my reservations about the physical side in terms of him just maybe just being the wrong kind of stature for the Premier League, but there's no doubting he's an incredibly talented young player. I think he's going to have a terrific career. I just hope it's at Spurs. We'll see. I think he just needs to get his opportunity and grab it. I guess that's the way to do it. Mark Trower, any news on naming rights? No, I haven't heard anything on naming rights for a little while, which probably means they'll announce something tomorrow. But no, I haven't heard anything on that. We kind of heard from both Daniel Levy and Todd Klein, the chief commercial officer, had said both at, what was it? It was the supporters. It wasn't Supporters Trust, was it? It was the it's gone out of my head. The Fans Advisory Board meeting, and also at the supporters fans forum type thing. In both of those, they both said there's no push to get that done right now. If the right offer comes in, it comes in, but they're also seeing a lot of benefits from having Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as the name. So, yeah, I haven't heard anything on that recently. If you could pick 4 academy players to put the first team, who would you pick right now, the way they're playing? Jamie Donnelly, Alfie Dorrington, Iago Santiago was doing so well, but he's picked up an injury at the moment, but I would have picked him to get more game time. And I guess Ashley Phillips right now is I know technically not an academy player, but he has been playing for the under-21s. Yeah, but like I say, Will Lancashire and June Bell doing terrific things as well. And, you know, younger ones, you've got Mikey Morgan, Therese Hall. They're obviously much younger for the future, but yeah, Callum Luacy as well. Olisezi. So bad at pronunciations. It's awful. What else we got? I think I'm getting towards the end of my questions. Yeah, I've answered that. Quite a few of these I've answered in the video as well. Yeah, these are more comments rather than questions. Mark Nickerson, will you be watching the new Ghostbusters film next year? And have you seen the trailer yet? I have seen the trailer. Yes, I will. I rewatched Ghostbusters Afterlife the other day, and it was actually I liked it even more than the first time. First time I watched it. It's got that real vibe of the originals, which the previous one they made with Melissa McCarthy just didn't have. It kind of felt like that was in its own world, which I think it was meant to be because it had original Ghostbusters setting up as different characters, so it absolutely was. But this one, yeah, it was in the real spirit. And obviously, it's Jason Reitman, isn't it? Ivan Reitman's son doing them. So, yeah, the next one looks quite cool. All frosty and icy. What else we got? Good question. Abe2. If Spurs had played Wolves on Sunday rather than early Saturday, would the match have gone differently? In terms of fitness, maybe to see out the game, potentially, I guess. Other than that, they're almost there. Was it 91st minute? They were 1-0 up. What else we got? I think we're coming to the end, to be honest. This isn't a question for me. I think it's a general question. Paul Magid. Can someone English please explain why pants is slang for mediocre or even worse? What is the association? I always thought pants were quite nice. I used that earlier, and I remembered seeing that comment. So as soon as I said it, I was like, poor Paul. Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know where it comes from. Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense. It's one of those strange English colloquialisms. Right, that's it, I think. I think that's it. Yeah, I'd say everything else I've kind of covered. Apologies if I have missed it. I've scrolling down hundreds of comments, which I love. I love the fact that people are so busy under the videos. It's almost its own little community within the comments. It's very cool. I try to see as many as I can. I'll try to like them if I see them and things like that. I don't always kind of get to see everything. But yeah, hopefully we covered plenty there. That was good fun. I enjoyed that. I always enjoyed the Q&As, especially if we can talk about a range of things. But hopefully, as much as I could pack into that, into an international break. Next one, unless something major happens in the week while I'm off, it's probably going to be, I'd imagine, maybe next Monday after Sunday's game. So, yeah, a little delay on this one, I suppose. But, yeah, you know what I'm like. I don't really want to do these unless there's plenty to talk about. Otherwise, it's just doing it for the sake of it, which is not the point of it. So, yeah. Right, I'm going to head off now. Enjoy the rest of my Sunday evening. I hope you all do the same. And don't worry, Tottenham Hotspur will be back shortly. Keep fingers crossed that all of the internationals come back safe and sound with no injuries. And and Spurs can turn it around against Villa. Obviously, very much no Bissouma suspended, no Romero suspended. Obviously, no Maddison or Van der Ven. Udogie hopefully back. He didn't head off to go with Italy because of precaution over the injury he had which kept him out pre-Chelsea, wasn't it? Kept him out of the Palace game. So hopefully he'll be okay. We'll get an update on that obviously later this week. But obviously he played, didn't he, against Wolves? So from everything I was told, it was more precautionary. But it's whether he's had any kind of pain in it. I think it was a muscle injury. And yeah, we see how that brings a bit more balance to the back line. And then what he does in midfield, is this the chance for Bentancur to come in? You'd imagine Højbjerg will start, Bissouma will be out, Sarr will be back. It's either going to be, I think you have to, Bentancur, or you bring Kulusevski back. You got Skippy there, but would you play Skip, Højbjerg and Sarr? I think that's too defensive overall. I think you have to bring Bentancur back in there if he's fit enough to do it, which you'd hope by then he will be, even if you're just going to get an hour out of him. Or, like I say, bring Kulusevski back, and then Bryan Gil, that we spoke about, comes in. Maybe Bryan Gil with Johnson and Son. But hey, let's get everyone back fit first. That's the main thing. They always come back with little knocks and problems, and predicting, funnily enough, the team for that post-international break first match is always the most difficult, because you don't know the states of some of the players until they kind of come back quite late in the week, and how they then react to training as well. So let's see. 4th against 5th, big match. Villa obviously flying. Unai Emery doing a really good job there. Some real threats that they've got. And Villa at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium have been pretty good. Pretty good in recent years. Still makes me shudder think about the one with the Reguilon own goal. After Bergwijn had scored early, and then the crowd afterwards, the awful walk of shame rather than walk of honour. It was horrendous. Hopefully a better one this weekend. They're going to need the crowd behind them. Obviously it's an understrength Spurs team. Crowd hopefully will make a big old noise, as they have done this season, and then maybe Spurs got to get back on track. Obviously lost against Chelsea, first defeat at the stadium this season. So needs to get back to winning ways. Right, I am going to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourself, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.